punctuation on this moment of celebration and excitement, a birthing, a process of beauty and dedication, to writing, to reading, to sharing. I am like overwhelmed and beyond honored to have this book come into existence here in the space. Just real quick, let's say this title, y'all. Red Tarot, a decolonial guide to divinatory literacy. Can we give a round of applause? Can we give another round of applause for the author? We are my dear friend and creator and just absolute incredible community member here. So I am just so excited that we get to be here together in celebration of this again, birth of something magical, something that is a gift and something that will continue to create space for folks to access tarot in a way that is outside of capitalism, outside of white supremacy, outside of anti-blackness, outside of anti-queerness, in a time where we need that so much, and we need tools to sustain ourselves as individuals, as practitioners, as teachers, as folks that hold space together. That's what I love about this book. It feels like a gift to make sure that we as folks that are in movement, in struggle, and activism, we are also continuing to take care of ourselves. We are making sure to pause and take a moment of reflection so that we can continue those movements and we can continue to push the scale forward. So one more round of applause, y'all. Christopher. Hi. You're on the couch again.
Yes.
The last time we were on this couch, we were talking about this exact moment.
We were.
But that was like a year ago.
That was like a year ago. Time is flown, and now we're here. We made it.
Now we're here. We pushed that baby out.
Yes, we did.
I mean, you did. I didn't.
I mean, we did. You know, I had doulas. Yes.
And again, amongst family, amongst community members here on sacred land, on cultivated soil and dirt, from our ancestors, as we always acknowledge this space and this ground, this dirt that has been gifted to us, and not without sacrifice, not without a lot of love and tenderness and labor. We appreciate our Kumeyaay ancestors in this space. So thank you all again for that. Rich soil, y'all. And I'm really excited that we're going to be able to start kind of the, not even deconstruction of this book, because y'all, this book is so phenomenal. And when Christopher asked me to sit down with them here on this couch to talk about it, the magnitude of this 412-page book, y'all. 412. Before the notes. Notes start on my birthday, 4/13. I love it. Also, we'll talk about it. The notes, pay attention to that spot. There should be 2 books floating around so that you can touch it, feel it, the tangible object of it, and so that you can really feel the love and the labor that went into this book. Yeah, I don't know that we will get to all of the things, but we are going to at least taste some of the sugar that you've placed on our plates for us. And this book will be available tomorrow here in the shop, so you'll have to figure out how to get to Christopher so you can get it signed as well, but we're just really grateful to have it here in the space. And we want to activate the evening, right?
Yes.
As you always do. You're so active in all of the work that you do here in the community. How are we going to begin?
Well, can we all take an inhale in and out, like a deep breath in? And out. Thank you for being here. Thank you for that introduction. If you have a tarot deck with you, feel free to pull a card about a card for helping to sustain a writing practice. We're gonna do a little behind the scenes. If you're into reading and writing and want to write, you can do so. And I have a deck here, so if people want to pull a card, maybe we can pass this around, shuffle it when it gets to you, all right? And then pull your card, and then make sure to give it back at the end, okay? Okay. So does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah? I'll start here, okay?
A hard to support a writing practice.
Yes.
Your writing practice or a writing practice. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll let it make its way there. And that was per Jesse's encouragement, just given to be a little bit meta about my own writing process and being here.
And all the writing that you had to
and all
do.
the writing that I had to do. 412.
That you chose to do.
I had to
Put-
do.
yeah.
I had to do.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
It was legit.
It was
An assignment.
It was an assignment. It was a calling. You know, it's definitely, it was like, I feel a new chapter is now opened in my life, and at the same time something significant has been closed. I feel like everything has been preparing me and leading me to this moment, to this book. And it's surreal that it's here, and to be here, and to have it in print, and like,
See your name.
see my name.
Amongst the gold, the
Amongst
shimmer.
the gold, like, it's to be label mates, as I like to say, with other works such as post-colonial astrology and many other brilliant, beautiful labors of love. And again, to birth it here with you all. Thank you again so much for being here with me for this moment. Writing is a very solitary practice, very enduring, persevering practice for me and my mode of writing. And so being able to present it to the public and see it in the hands of readers is momentous, and it's a dream. You know, it's like a big part of why I want to do the work in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of writing, how long did it take to birth this baby?
Oh my gosh, it took like a year to write the the first manuscript, the first draft of the manuscript. I gave myself a crazy deadline. My editor reached out to me, like asking me if I wanted to write the work, and I was like, hello, yes. Absolutely. And you know, you have to make a book proposal and write the first chapter and everything, and so I did that for, you know, to get the book deal. And I got the deal, and I was like, okay, I can do this by December of 2022. And it was a crazy deadline, and I was like, okay, and and then I did it. And it took another year or so to format, to edit, to just kind of go back and forth with the revisions and all the other things. Publishing is a very slow process. You know, it was like this, like, sack of potatoes, like being shifted back and forth. It was like a relief when I finished my edits, or when I finished, you know, the part of it, and I gave it to my editor. I was like, okay, y'all, sit with it now, and then they give it back to me. I'm like, oh Lord, like, oh God, it's on my shoulders again, you know. So yeah.
Beautiful.
About a year, and then like 2 years, like a year for the first draft, and then another year for like the edits.
And I'm not going to give it all away, but you talk a lot about seeds in this book, and just in our conversations as well. But when was the seed for this book planted?
Oh my goodness. I teach independently. I teach tarot. I'm an astrologer, a diviner. I do this work independently. My master's is in education, and so I taught 7th and 8th grade English. And because I'm vocally queer and anti-racist, could not get hired at the standard formal institution after my first year teaching. The pandemic hit, and I pivoted to divination. But because I have that background, I was like adamant about figuring out how to marry the two, to come to them from a critical perspective, and in a way that it took like writing a whole book to feel at least like a humble attempt at doing that. There's so much that goes into that, you know, and to not be like new agey, like, you know, capitalism, like let's just call this thing radical or whatnot, without like the actual depth and discipline and rigor required to have such a practice. And so I would say like late 2020 to 2021, it was really when I started really pursuing my praxis, like the red read, like what is that, you know, to read red, right? Applying this decolonial lens, which implies an anti-racist lens, which implies like an anti-capitalist lens and whatnot. and so having my website open and my consultations open and just like going slowly step by step, the publisher found me. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, Spirit, like, okay, God, like, thank you, universe. Like, it was confirmation that this being a carny, as I like to consider myself sometimes, like just ran off to the circus to be like queer and on the outskirts and like outside of the institution, was affirmed by that. There's been significant moments where I get those confirmations, if you will, that like keep going, you know, because it's very hard. It's very hard to survive today. You know, I'm sure as we all know, it's very hard to find a sense of faith, a sense of meaning, a sense of like you're actually making progress or healing or surmounting some sort of significance. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that about the moments of confirmation after you decided to be, like you made a declaration to be on the outskirts, to say, I am not going to exist within these institutions. They don't want me and I don't want them. And then to trust, the level of trust that it requires, and like you said, faith to step out. And then I don't necessarily agree with this language, but like put your head down and do the work. But sometimes it very much is that.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. Like
Yes.
put your head down and do the work, and then look up and see opportunity in front of you because of not luck, but because a combination of like divine and the work coming together.
Yeah.
To do that. And it shows, y'all. I keep mentioning this notes part in their book, or portion in their book, because it is tens of 20s of 30s, 100 names.
I hear so many names.
So many authors and folks that have come before us in just liberation movements that have made sure that they're paving the way, probably in moments of so much in loneliness and on their own, and you have pulled them together. You've really woven something here, where you bring prophets that came before us to talk about this work, and you've woven it into every chapter. I'm just gonna name like a couple of the prophets that you chose to include: Toni Morrison, Patricia Garcia, Bell Hooks, Sherry Moraga, Gloria Andaluza, Paulo Fieri, Erica Buenaflor, Audre Lorde, Baldwin. All of these prophets and creators and artists are folks that you have woven into this work. Something that I myself have never encountered when we're talking about tarot, when we're talking about it as a tool, and when we're talking about it as a tool of liberation. So just absolutely beautiful. How did you go about that? I know that it was a very intimate experience for you, choosing the books. You were in here pretty regularly.
Yes.
Looking for specific creators and authors to bring into the text. How did you go about that process?
It's ongoing. I mean, I think that's the great thing about sort of like a bibliomancy practice as well, right? Like finding, like I just organically, in terms of my own way of reading the cards, I pull a card and then read something by Bell Hooks or Toni Morrison or, you know, whoever, and it's like they're reading the card. Like, this is exactly the card. Like, this was the meaning. Like, this gives greater depth and voice to the card than like the little standard white booklet, right, that comes along with the tarot deck. And then also, again, a mode of honoring my teachers and my ancestors and these third world feminists, like queer, like that kind of era. Like, Toni Morrison is so heavily featured.
Yes.
Bell Hooks is very heavily featured. Jose Esteban Munoz is very heavily featured. Like, they're very foundational to my thinking. They're like, you know, the Trinity, if you will, to a sort. And just wanting to maintain a crux of like, you're really gonna get something that is theoretical in this, or like that has like it's baked in there well.
It's baked in so well.
You know,
the
again.
Best mac and cheese you ever had.
Yes.
Best mac and cheese you ever had.
And also studying and knowing the card and like studying like the deck. The book is designed for any deck that you might have, you know. But of course, like blending the Smith-Waite tradition by Pamela Coleman Smith, who illustrated, you know, one of the most iconic decks now that has become the format for like so many tarot decks, but also applying some of that Marseille tradition in terms of the visual element of reading the cards and like going between them. And I like to say cards are cast iron skillets, like they're like cast iron skillets, you know? Like they just get, for me, they get layer and layers upon meaning, and like there's a new texture and a new flavor each reading, but they extend, like there's still an echo, like each card is an archive, you know? And then when you add on the astrological associations and synchretizations behind the tarot, that adds a whole other layer, like, you know what I mean? Like I drew the Three of Swords to help sustain my writing practice, and that is Saturn in Libra, and my Libra queen is Bell Hooks. Like she writes so much about betrayal and honesty, and I quote her directly in that section. And so that was another layer in terms of like knowing my favorite writers, astrological placements, and then like what those correspond to in the cards, and seeing them like literally write out the archetype of the card.
Yeah.
And then also working with a variety of decks, which would sometimes pull in a different visual element or consideration that happened. But it was all also very synchronistic. Like it was all so very divine as well.
You can see you weaving, you can see you placing the threads over one another, again, in a way that I've never witnessed before. Do we want a little taste of this? Should we see some cards and then choose the portion of the book to talk a little bit about it?
Does anyone want to share the cards that they pulled so far? Yes, so we'll go 1 and 2. Okay.
I got the Three of Cups.
Oh, very nice. Can I ask what comes to mind just before I read for you about how that card might sustain a writing practice? Are you right? Do you write? Are you right? Do you write?
Yeah, I think I'm a writer in some sense. I think the message that I got when I pulled it was related to like community and maybe not taking everything on for myself, or understanding that what I'm writing about is related to the macrocosm of like the world versus just me.
Yeah.
It's like all related, that all of these threads are kind of woven within me and without me.
Yeah, I love that.
Wow.
That definitely brings up a lot in mind and makes me think of some stuff. I'll go to the section, but like writing comadres, you know, and writing collectives, and people who can write with and share the work with, and get feedback on, and like, yeah, totally. Let me see, I'll read a little bit from that section. All right. Three of Cups, and this, I open each section with a quote, right, from various authors, and this one is from Selah Sederstrom, who I mentioned earlier, and she's chosen to teach my work at University of Denver to her PhD students. So it's really cool. Like I didn't know her when I, you know, included her in the work, and like personally, and now that I do, and now she's like actually going to teach my. It's so surreal. No big deal. No big deal. Also, again, like outside making my way back into the canon without like I was determined to do that anyhow, or you know. All right, so she writes, something I've observed from reading cards is that more people than you might imagine have problems with celebration. People conflate celebration with excess, a lack of discipline, egotism, or most problematically with being happy. The concept of celebration is often straitjacketed by shame. Many times I've observed the cards respond to this position by saying that, in fact, celebration is vital to survival. Celebration casts a space in which we can anchor what we have been through, so that we might claim the wisdom of having survived it. Celebration is not about numbing out, rather it is about the acquisition of wisdom, often earned through suffering. The Three of Cups is about embodied invocation. It engages the ritual communication that helps create the sacred geography established in the Three of Pentacles. The body is sacred landscape in the Three of Pentacles. The body is a vernacular of song in the Three of Cups. It is the good spirits of the cups permeating the vessel of the pentacles. Cards like the Three of Cups and the Four of Wands remind us of the necessity of ceremonial celebration for collective harmony. To survive, we celebrate. As it has been said, there can be no revolution without music, dance, and laughter. Further, joyous, playful states of being, are states of divination. Celebration is a ceremony of continuance made through merriment. The Three of Cups is a toast to the passing of time, binding the past, present, and future together. The Three of Cups is a chance to redeem our suffering, to reframe our past and celebrate our survived devastations. We cannot enter a future of greater possibility, a future born of radical imagination, without crossing the threshold of the Three of Cups. Many cards come asking for an offering of grief, heartache, and fearful confusion. They are no more real or demanding than the ones calling for revelry. Revelry is a route towards revelation. The word gambling was its etymological roots in the Middle English word for making merry, gamlin, a variant of gammon, which links games, playing, jokes, and risk, reminds us that throwing cards is a game of creative chance, and games are often a form of festivity. In the calling out of our personal grief-filled grievances, celebratory chances facilitate continuity. We raise the cup to raise the flesh, to lighten its load, to remove its burden. We celebrate so that we can say yes to life again and commence a new cycle with its climaxes and depressions, its absurdities and glittering orgasmic ephemera. As the three describe matrices of communal environments, gardens of change, spaces of body temples to worship each other's nature, they are championed by the women, femmes, curanderas, and high priestesses who bring us into the community of belonging and the divination of love. We can imagine the sacred, protected places where they enjoy themselves without concern, regard, or distortion by the male gaze. The celebratory acts are communal acts commemorating the triumph of spirit overcoming exile. The Three of Cups is a card of time magic in the landscapes of cherished community. As water is a bearer of memory, these water bearers toast the joyous memory that is yet to be. It is a precognitive cleansing, so that our anticipation, availability, or response to the future is not impeded by trauma recollection. Even if they are bearers of dangerous memory, their cognizance redeems the severed selfhood of lost and forgotten lives within a new future that we come together to envision and create. I'm like, I won't finish that. And also, I mean, what you're saying, I think of like Toni Morrison and Tony Bambara talking about, like I mentioned it a bit in there, but coming over like with groceries, like I got the kids, like you go right, you go do what you need to do, and like treating each other as if they were in communion, despite not sometimes always being in like neighborhoods, in the same neighborhood, right? And so absolutely, so you know, that kind of sisterhood and gardens of spirit and joy to like write in response to commemorate. Yeah, Gracie, yeah.
I got the world.
Hey, the world, bam! I love that, and yeah, tell us what you think about that.
Well, it just, for me, writing feels like the world, the way I interact with the world, I process the world. I am a poet. My book's over there.
Period.
So, for me, it's everything. It's how I ground myself in an air sign, very like out there. But there's no earth in my chart. So it's the way to ground myself and understand how I'm moving in the world. It's like all consuming to me. It's what truly brings me joy. Or will be able, if I'm having a bad day, I can ground myself, pull myself back through writing, through any kind of writing. But that's what I was thinking about when I got the world.
I mean, fantastic. Again, I'm so happy to have other authors here, other diviners here, queers here, of course. Yes. I love that. I mean, the world, of course, if you don't know, if you're not familiar with the tarot structure, it's the last card of the fifth suit, the major arcana, which is what kind of makes a tarot deck, though it has relation to playing cards, right? And so it's this big moment, you know, it's a big moment. And so that card in particular, I pulled that card at several moments in my own journey to getting this book made, and it felt very like, yes, the world, you know, like absolutely. So I'll read a bit from the world. And this time I open with my queen, Mariah Carey. All right. I wanted to present something new on the world and taking a bit from her memoirs. the meaning of Mariah Carey, as in essence of this, and we'll get into it. I refuse to acknowledge time, famously so. I've made a lot of jokes and memes about it, but it's a very real belief for me. I cried on my 18th birthday. I thought I was a failure because I didn't have a record label yet, a record deal yet. That was my only goal. It was as if I was holding my breath until I could hold a physical thing, an album that had Mariah Carey printed on it. Once I got my deal, I exhaled and my life began. From that day on, I calculated my life through albums, creative experiences, professional accomplishments, and holidays. I lived Christmas to Christmas, celebration to celebration, festive moment to festive moment, not counting birthdays or ages, much to the chagrin of certain people. If you're familiar with that card, again, I think that's a very fitting description for the world and for technology here. I write this in praise of the prima donna, the grand dame diva herself, the world. The world is a grand temple of the diva, an archival record of her claim to autonomy. Of all the divas I applaud, it is Mariah Carey who is central to my creative adoration. As she tells her story, she reaches a retro activation that frames her present iconicity as an illumination of the politics of the past. If power is a performance, a show, a display, then on stage is where it is most critically negotiated. In the archive of the diva's afterlives, there are moments when the power she negotiates on stage, in her work, becomes legible, even more so as one who has always held a pen, a fact that contemporary audiences are only beginning to appreciate because she has been made illegible, erased, or forgotten. She performs through and against limiting frameworks and retrograde tropes, as her iconicity becomes a moving performance when her show, dripping with poignant artistic execution, extends into her public persona. She's made her diva persona a vehicle, so her artistry, her iconicity are mobile across space-time, which affords the longevity of her legacy. This mobility reconfigures the meaning of her performances across geographic space and time, and continuously works against shifting and sedimented racial logics. Her work persists even when her musical, cultural commentary is trivialized, subsumed in glamour, or constrained by dominant narratives. Her performance tactics work through and against exploitative cultural ideologies. A diva is power-conscious and self-proclaimed, undeniable in the prowess of her performance. The diva's image must be reappropriated from misogynist portrayals of obstinacy and willfulness that need taming. To make her legacy legible, she revisits and revises against shifting political frameworks of public perception, recitation practices, and the stage. With the world, she works to unmoor her artistry from the confines of a reductive culture, to let her talent overflow the limits of enduring primitivism, orientalism, and exoticism in representational economies. The world is her way of moving completely outside the orthodox body of knowledge and all its present conceptions. Her methodology is temporally queered. Moreover, the self-fashioning of the world is a way queer collectivity creates an ingenuity that challenges the reified, racialized world order. To speak of our aspirations, experiences, or definitions, calculations, and considerations of accomplishment, the world is a record. It tells us we can succeed in becoming timeless, for we just need the celebratory moment of sharing the diva's iconicity that we can indulge in time and time again. It appears as we surrender the fixation we have on time. The world goes round, back and forth, up and down, adding the moments of sacred memory to make the meaning of now. The world is the diva's time orientation where progress is measured and growth marked by an artistry realized, a soul expression made manifest, and a celebration shared. All achievement is measured by her artistry. Accomplishments all the more meaningful because of her continual confrontation with the larger consolidation of whiteness that both excludes and incorporates the racial and sexual other to invent the modern. The world is winning, like pussy, like cunt. It is a portrait of virtuosity, and it is visceral. The world is her diamond record, the smash success, the worldwide wonder. The world signs her priceless autograph on culture, which is a composition of memories, mishaps, struggles, and survival in song. The world is the diva triumphant in her autobiography, for she has refused to be defined or filtered to fulfill another's assignment. The world is the word that matches the diva's dance. It is the story of who she is, according to her. Thank you.
Absolutely, I know. cards, y'all, to get a taste. The book is available tomorrow.
You can add your name and email for giveaway.
Yeah, if you're just joining us.
Join my Substack.
Please, tell them. Tell them.
Tell them.
Tell them. For folks who are joining us, we are going to be giving away 3 books at the end of the evening. If you didn't get a chance, put your name and your email down at the back there, so you can join the writing experience of Christopher's new project, which I want to ask you about right now. But we'll keep on theme. We'll keep on
With this
theme.
one, yeah.
And thank y'all for participating by drawing cards, so that we could read together. I love that you've always been a big proponent of sharing, reading together, literacy being a collective act, and something that we do in communion. It's really, really powerful. You also just have this incredible way with language that I think we all got to witness right now, just like placing letters and words side by side so that they embrace one another. They don't just lie flat on paper. And so the big word in the title that I want to talk a little bit about is red, the color red, something that we see in modern day society as either passionate or strong. It can be representative of big feelings or anger. It can also just, at its core, it's a primary color. It is one of the colors that all other colors come from, originate from, when combined with other things. So all of these definitions exist around us, but I wanted to ask why you chose, not only for the title of the book, The Red Tarot, but also your whole pedagogy of what it is that you do.
Yeah, I mean, all of that. Yes, cheers to all that. Absolutely. I mean, there is a reckoning with this book through to my own indigeneity. I grew up on tribal land, like on and off the reservation, like many Latinos and whatnot. We have indigenous native blood, but because of racism and because of all these things, we don't claim it. We don't name it because of colonialism. There's been a ruptured lineage. There's been lost, connections there. And of course, I mean, I knew of my ancestry, my indigeneity, but the ability to go on and off tribal land and have support and be invited into tribal community has always made that an important praxis into grounding my movement practice, my work, right, my activism. And so red gets to that. It gets to that kind of indigenous marker, right? I also am a Martian. I have the red planet, and I have a Scorpio stellium. Antares, the heart of the scorpion in the constellation. I have in Terran in an angle with my Saturn, which is connected to this book, and the top of my chart in publishing. I wanted this work to be alongside red pedagogy, red skin, white masks, red medicine. There's those books, again, were very like pillars, like foundations to the work. And so I wanted this to just like be there with them, like to exist in that red lineup, if you will. And then blood and passion and the red thread that you wrap around your hands when you're administering a limpia for yourself. The red thread that you wrap around your hand when you're walking a more feminine path, right? When you're going under a goddess or a priestess or a prophetess, which are women who claim knowledge for themselves, who claim the ability to commune with spirits, with nature, in ways that patriarchal churches and religions do not allow and condemn, actually, right? And so there is something transgressive in that I would aspire to, again, a lineage of ancestors that I wanted to exist within. And again, through the work, it's not only a narrating of the cards, or theorizing, if you will, on the practice of the cards, but woven through is my own, my own identity in terms of being queer and trans and native, and working out like a re-indigenation and using the tarot as a prophecies for repairing that rupture.
Yeah, you did a great job already just giving us a little bit of that flavor, but I love 0. When you open up the book, 0, you don't start at 1, you start at 0. And this is where you kind of create this landscape for us, or create a defining characteristics of what red means to you in this book and the work, and touching on some of those points. Do you mind reading some of those?
Absolutely, yes.
Before
Thank
you
you.
get started, I did let the vendors know that they can leave just because it's, a little rainy and cold. So if it's okay with you, maybe like a little 5-minute pause if anybody wants to get
Absolutely,
a
perfect.
little bit of food and drink before they leave, if anybody wants.
Restroom or anything.
Extra?
Or tuition, yeah. But,
Yes, take a
Zero
break.
The opening lines to this book, 0 again. My family is from Yucatan, Merida, so the idea and the representation of 0 is really close to me, as being part of the origin there. So I don't know why I assumed you were gonna start at 1. So when I opened it up and I saw 0 was the opening, and then what you're about to read and how you set the stage for us is just like, it's very intentional, it's very beautiful, and I'm excited for it to share.
Thank you. 0, yes, and on an aside, because of the limitations of the structures of just making a book, right? It's like
Yes,
the first
that's
chapter,
something.
it's like taking the first chapter, it's like, it's 0, okay? It's 0. It's like really 0. And like, remember me to say about these tabs, because it's just another little note. But anyhow,
Oh, yes, and
the
tabs.
red read, when rationality runs dry, it's red that will reconcile the world. The hue vibrant and vital inside its brown. Red is passion in its primary. It's first and it's forever. To be born, this work broke open my heart. So let this reading be opened by my blood offering, a requisite pound of flesh. Black ink will be dried blood across these pages, and like always, blood returns to the earth. I hope this serves you because for me it was a necessity. It filled me with passion, purged me of residual rage, and protected me as I pray for red power to seduce the soul back into my body. Red is my thread. Reading is my right, and I say that reading should revitalize you. It should make you red. Red is the substance that raises knowledge into wisdom. Red will restore full-bodied relationality through a divine dialogue we pursue together. Red is not rational, it's intimate, numinous, and intrinsically correspondent. Red Tarot evolves this understanding into a project of critical prophetic literacy. Liberatory prophecy activates modes of expanded cognition through such communication. It is not a simple transfer of information. It's a recovery of native knowing that knows the cosmos is alive and communicative. Literacy and language are capital in our socio-cultural worlds. Those with more social, economic, and political power claim for themselves the ability to determine which languages and discourses are legitimized. So as language is an ideological site of struggle, reading tarot is an act of resistance by radically expanding who gets to be considered literate, meaning Red Tarot lives in the legacy of literacy being a means of enacting emancipation. Red Tarot is a project of simultaneous decolonization and re-indigenization. Red Tarot is unafraid to confront, listen, critique, or unveil. Red light makes each card a prism of poetic political praxis. The reader unfamiliar with social horror will find their imagination engaged and activated. They will see how colonial consciousness consolates in their inner and outer worlds. It's within the schemes of perception that symbolic domination is able to obscure itself. Its activities are hidden in our cognitive relationships by working through the very categories and lenses of perception. Red Tarot works to unveil and interrupt the symbolic violence by sensitizing us to the psyche's uncontested perceptive frames and modes, making it co-responsive to external, historical, and social environments. To reverse the process of forcible de-indigenization, Red Tarot offers a visual framework for interpreting the tarot in a manner that perceives, disrupts, and rejects conditioned colonial consciousness. To make meaning in different space-times, we shift the frames that shape reality perception to free them from their colonial context, making them mobile and possessed of a mind all their own. By describing myself and my work as decolonial, I invoke a long history of insurgent subjectivity. I take the tarot as a starting point to observe and critique the genocidal logic of the European colonial racial imaginary. My daily divination with the tarot guides me into direct, intentional, and inventive action from this red subjectivity. As Patricia Gonzalez does, I use the term red in Red Tarot to transcend various conceptual borders as indigenous people and their epistemologies are centered in their world rather than disempowered at the fringe. As Gonzalez was inspired by Sandy Grande's Red pedagogy, Red Tarot is my attempt to extend a paradigm of indigenous reclamation, reimagining, and regeneration of self-determined relationships. By reframing and rereading the text that is tarot, it can be claimed as an alternative local epistemology of the people that can renew the divinatory animacy that permeates ancient ways of knowing in the present language body. Our sense perception is represented by the symbolic code that is language. Language is more than intellectual. It makes meaning of the body and spirit of speaker, reader, writer. True language is never mechanically intellectual. It is sensuous, evocative, and emotive. It is animate and animating. The sound of our speech expresses the living spirit. Despite extended loss, we can again root ourselves in the cosmic order with the image vehicles offered in the tarot. Each symbol is a library of concentrated stories, knowledges, names, parables, omens, and augurs. The practice of laying cards can bring forth a creative communion through the application of the divinatory mind that branches from the metamorphic mind, the collective mind by which we describe, create, and imagine an animate world with interrelated participation. These symbols express the process of unseen forces materializing as spiritual matter. Though it takes conscious effort to call upon the metamorphic mind, by summoning it from the subconscious, we can again commence a communion with nature every time we lay cards. Red Tarot images the reflexivity of a sovereign subjectivity. Its readers are part prophet, part poet, part political participant. Their self-reflexivity intersects social critique, navigating dangerous inner and outer terrain with a critical imagination. A red reading finds the political in the everyday, so that the daily practice of pulling cards becomes a documentation of working class lives, persisting to transcend exploitation, find belonging, and heal their soul. Red Tarot understands that the meaning within everyday social relations is to be inscribed, decoded, deployed, translated, and circulated. It enacts a rubedo, that is the flesh entry into a reality that we know radically, viscerally. As readings are a dialogic experience between querent and reader, text and audience, card and consciousness, they can be seen to enliven an oracular cultural mode of knowledge production that is wholly contextualized within the field of interaction, intuitive and emotionally sensitive. The alchemy of red reading looks upon the reality of the image as more than what has been, opening a door to an arrow suppressed through, quote, chemical reactions fixed on metal and paper that represent desires and lusts, longings and yearnings, end quote. Reading with the whole body, the socially matrixed body, the emotional body, and the soul is erotic reading. Red readers go beyond interpretation. Their readings articulate an artistry of dissent. Their words, their images, their cards, their readings are renderings of a politicized imagination. Their craft is combined with their commitment. A red reading marries the intensity of lived experience with the aesthetic imagination toward real-world application. More than mere fortune-telling, red reading reconnects the personal with the universal current of cyclical creation, in consequence to encourage an expanse of responsiveness through personal awareness and responsibility. Red reading transforms reality with pictographs that subvert the chronology of colonial language claims. Red Tarot indexes cis-het, white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist indices of power, while also promoting a literacy that changes those dynamics. Since it is still white stream institutions that contextualize the education of Black, brown, and indigenous students, resistance requires knowledge of the oppressor and the oppressor's language. Red Tarot aims to offer new interpretations for an old body of images, to break the hold of colonizing representations, and to map decolonized psychic social space. In this queer world, with its ensemble of social actors, we come to understand the dimensions and topographies of being, a visual understanding that builds a place for language to go. By entering this queer world, we can experience the joys, the risks, and rewards of self-exploration, self-reclamation. The spiritual practice of reading tarot reads red when it acknowledges, regards, and relates to the inner world as a sacred landscape. Divination facilitates the creation of sacred geography, so that the cards become codices with multiple histories surrounding them, and values and signposts are embedded within a cartography of critical consciousness and their symbolic metaphor. Quote, I'm quoting here, indigenous people are people of place. and the nature of place is embedded in their language. The physical, cognitive, and emotional orientation of a people is a kind of map they carry in their heads and transfer from generation to generation. This map is multidimensional and reflects the spiritual as well as the mythic geography of a people. Knowing the origins of their people, their place, and the all-important things that the place contains is considered an essential orientation for a tribal person. A people's origin story maps and integrates the key relationships with all aspects of the landscape. End quote. Profound symbolic communication stems from indigenous cultural foundations, but also interrelated life understandings that necessarily include distinctly Black, queer, feminist thought. But it's not a red read without leading to the repatriation of native lands, native ways of being and knowing. Red reading is a transgressive cultural act in centering the spiritual selfhood, otherwise actively denied to impose inhumane domination. Deities speak through doorways in our heart mind. Beyond an awareness of these doorways into different dimensions of peace, possibility, and fulfillment, these cards offer keys. Red Tarot regards tarot reading as a tool of revolution by revealing the inner sanctums of power, the shadowed structures of dominance. Tarot's language is meant to be unexpected. It shocks you, wakes you, humors and comforts you, and offers you medicine in the multiple ways of knowing, seeing, and saying. It helps you cope with uncertainty by making chaos and potential something to play in. The syntax of a red reading refuses to be frozen into resolution, for the tarot is not a fixed text. Therefore, Red Tarot is not designed to be a comprehensive document, but I hope that by tying decolonial, feminist, queer, anti-racist literature to the aesthetic artifact that is tarot, with its emotional and imaginal affect, the scholarship may reach a more profound audience than one would typically expect. When the silence of my own company becomes insufficient, the invention of my imagination becomes my companion. And my cards come alive with spirits from above, below, ahead, and behind. In writing this book, I may not have fully trusted my own imagination. I may have relied too heavily on what I know and who came before. But it is my bowing before my teachers as I call upon a chorus of ancestors that my voice might harmonize and with them be raised to heights that would have been impossible to reach as a solo. I offer these cards as pedagogies that may be guides towards critical praxis and profound meaning-making, but not as a one-size-fits-all metaphysical elixir. Its magic is malleable. It'll work best if you bring your own deck, your touch, and your own tongue to your readings. The divinatory mind is a speculative mode, offering what, quote, might be termed an ethics of equivocation that enables something like an ontological humility or an ethos of ontological multiplicity, end quote. Red reading fosters a perceptual disposition that delves into disorderly ways of knowing. By offering a numerical ordering of the cards by chapter, themes are uncovered that connect each numeric group, such as visibility with the 9s, resistance with the 7s, or displacement with the 5s. Connections are made across suits, major and minor arcana. Its awareness may be more perplexing, ambiguous, fractured, and fractal, but it is not necessarily less reliable. Its images are aesthetically dubious, so that our readings acquire epistemic flexibility to skillfully navigate and inhabit multiple worlds. The oracular language body regards all occurrences within the reading as meaningful. The reader views a series of cards bordered and with empty space between them with the gaze of an enlightened witness. They linger over, observe, and control the pace of the reading. They can read each card at a time, forth and back, and then assess the composition of the spread all at once. With a glance, they can reorient themselves in the reading based on the visual cues that claim attention as the querence narrative is further disclosed and developed. They extract meaning from the implied relations between the borders of each card, filling lapses of time, emotion, and cognition. Red readers work the tarot as a mode of disidentification, as theorized by Jose Esteban Munoz, wherein the disidentificatory optic is turned to shadows and fissures within the text, where radicalized presences can be liberated from the protective custody of the white literary imagination. Any shadow seer is an occultist. Because our current awareness is an offspring of colonial relations, the shadow is the other, the black, brown, and red bodies buried in the white gaze of white America. Red reading is strategic to resist and confound the identity states white supremacy prescribes. Red readers resist assimilation. They work with dominant cultural modes and materia and restructure them from within to render themselves free and self-fashioned. The shadow work of red readers aims to foreground the dissociated, divorced, alienated, and dejected to transfigure our identity matrices and repair our relations. They are fluent in the alliance between language and visually rendered ideas. They understand each card as a partial sequence of a much larger trajectory. They develop political imaginaries through powerful narrations of the speculative that nuance the conceptual and perceptual approaches of knowing and being. In the imaginative space of the reading, readers offer divergent accounts for reality through the variable frames of reference presented in each card. With frame after frame of reference, it is clear that each card is not establishing the boundaries of truth. Rather, it is discerning the appropriate interpretation, understanding, and ordering of truth from an array of visual possibilities. What's true, imagined, or communicated within one reading changes in the next, because although the same set of cards is used, their shuffling recycles, reinvents, and renews meaning between readings. Since cards and decks may be non-identical but structurally similar, they offer multiple modes of understanding inner and outer reality. We can pull cards when we are lost in the dark, displaced and despairing. The cards are flashlights through the dark tunnels of our interiority, finding all of the psychic fault lines of violent eruption. But for me, they shine with their own light. And then they are cyborg technology, a processes that allows my stride to be walked with dignity. With my red writing, I repair my people's innate divinatory faculty, ruptured right with their indigeneity. The cards are daimonic forces, spirits that can guide and assist through our multidimensional excursions. Through the looking glass, we find that in the tarot, a 78-port entry into another realm, with another opportunity for finding and inscribing the pain, the love, the memories, the fears, the mundane, and the sublime of life. We need them not just to allay fear, but also to find inner treasure, to be led into the possibilities beyond the known world of hierarchical domination. If we look long enough, we will find unexpected guidance in the designs for living. I'm in a trance state there.
Like, what a welcome spell for me when I first read that portion. It's just, it was a spell that, with the purpose of igniting imagination and igniting new understanding and everything beyond, and to the left and to the right and underneath and on top and all around.
Yes.
All around.
Word.
But I love that you talked about a little bit about the structure of the book and how in some ways it kind of is limiting, and then in some ways it holds the capacity for us to safely be able to go outside of them. We know we can return to this structure. We know we can come back to this place that's held together. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the structure of the book and how you laid it out, but also you need to take a sip of water
I know, right?
after that blessing.
I know. I narrated the audio book version, so you know. So you want to hear me continue read to you, you can do so. But it was an endeavor to do so. But this is what I do, so you know I can.
This
I
is
can,
what we
I
do.
can read. Yes, the cards are structured, or the book is structured by the numerics in a sense, but also, and I wanted to do so distinctly from a typical tarot text that you might have, where it's like the full to the world, and then like each of the suits, like ace to the king, right? Because one, that's not how we read tarot. Generally, like when we're getting a reading, you're not getting them in order. You're getting a mix of cards, right? And so you will see major and minor arcana placed together. But also, I kind of open with my own slight numerology with each chapter and each section that provides just understanding of like 2 or 3 or 6 or 7 or again 5 in this placement and bridging some of those connections across the suit, right? So that you're getting, it's more to me it feels comprehensive to read them in that manner, like rather than just like this is the cups chapter. Like this is the, you know, you're getting like this chapter is like you're gonna get these cards from each of the suits, right?
Yeah. complete magic when you introduce each chapter with the number and then contextualize what the chapter is going to entail with an understanding of what, for instance, the number 2 represents to us socially, individually, biologically, bringing in all of those different points of view of the number itself. I feel like really grounded each chapter, and I absolutely love that part. And I would totally just like, I meditated on them. They're like little meditations right before you dive deep into the other readings of each card. And I also want to remind you about your
Oh yes,
little
thank you.
tab.
This is okay. It's all a learning process. I mean, and again, we'll kind of open to questions in a bit as well, but like, this is my first book, y'all, and my first thing, and so I am very happy to be here. And you know, they do prints, right? Like you know, you do multiple prints, and so the next print will have some corrections. There's only really one, especially that I really want to just point out, because it's not just like an aesthetic choice, it just changes the meaning. So I wish I could tell the whole world this with whoever's getting this copy.
Make a video. I love
Like,
it. We can make a video.
But it's so feeling prop. But it's page 340 for the sun, and the sentence reads, imaginative forays into the far distant future that are liberatory, and it should say must not advance the modern, the postmodern.
I feel that.
Any perception consistent with the European notion of enlightenment. So it's missing the not, and that definitely changes that structure. Okay, so like, tell your friends, you're like, wait, what is this like the not, like, trust me enough by the time I hope that you've gotten there, like, know that was like a typo there.
But I feel like
You know?
that is such an opportunity to talk about. So we were going to move on to questions.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was
No,
like
yeah, no,
an
absolutely.
editorial thing, but I was like, they told me to
It was an
remind them.
editorial, right.
Which is beautiful
you.
and an important opportunity to talk about, you know, in our communities of color, of trans communities, of BIPOC communities, femme-identified and female writers pushing into the publishing world and what that looks like. Who are those that we look to for guidance and to say, oh, this is what worked, this is not what worked. And I love that we've able to come together in this space to be able to talk about that. So we do want to open it up to questions, not just about that process, but also the work, because I'm sure as y'all can tell, like after Christopher reads, it's like popcorn in my brain, like a million different moments that I want to pause and meditate and take space for. But y'all are gonna all have the opportunity for yourselves when you take this book home tomorrow. So if those questions went off in your mind, we want to give an opportunity for that, for sure, as far as the process of publishing, the work itself.
Yeah.
There's so many peaks and valleys you create, and both the peaks and the valleys are so submerging. When you're down in the depths of the work, I'm happy to be in the darkness and like in the deep. And then when I'm high, I'm like, oh, I'm so high on language right now, and I can see everything. And from this vantage point, nothing is impossible. And so, no, of course, absolutely. I'm telling you, y'all, when they asked me to sit here, I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna start, where we're gonna end, or where we're gonna go, but we'll get somewhere.
Yes.
You know. So I want to open it up to all of you all. And before we do, I just want to say thank you to Christopher for sitting here with us and sharing so much of yourself, of your work, of your time, of your energy with this gift, because we just got a small taste of small moments of all that went into the book, and it's truly a gift. And I hope that we all collectively remember this moment, because it's about to be big. It's about to be really big in a way that's not just for the public or for accolades, and that too, we're receiving that blessing. But also, we're claiming that blessing, but also for progression and movement and guidance and collective care of one another and ourselves. yeah, when you talk about that in the book, I'm like, I'm done.
I mean, can I
Yes,
respond a
please,
little
all
bit?
the
Like,
things,
that's-
please. I'll just keep
I'm
telling.
like, I hope y'all have questions if y'all have it, but like, please. I mean, it speaks to the reason, like, why write a book? Because we had thought about as well, like, versus
yeah.
any other
The object.
technology, the materiality of writing a book, but like, why have a bookstore? You know, and it's part of that mode of legacy, of endurance in ways that our technology, our Wi-Fi gets cut,
Yeah.
your shit gets lost in the cloud, and like then what, right?
Yeah.
But you know, like again, bell hooks are really like that. Like I love bell hooks. Like, so I know we all do, but like, you know, like
You love
I
her more.
I love her. Yeah. I know. I just like I feel so in communion with her, and like her writing is always. And the fact that I can still be reading her words after she has passed, and know that it's been distributed so many times to so many readers, and you know, I can only hope that my work will endure beyond my corporeality. This is like a bit of, you know, Pygmalion and Galatea like coming to life here, right? Like, and being able to like have its own soul essence, and
Yeah.
be like, people have told me again that they're doing bibliomancy with my book already, that they're teaching it like that. It's just surreal, and so
Yeah.
I think that's something you can only get through the pain, long labor of writing a book, because it's certainly not
Scarring
easy.
parchment.
Very, very much.
Scar that parchment.
It's very hard. But I think worth it, and I think again so worth it to have this book be birthed and welcomed by all of you. And thank you for your attention and listening and presence out in the cold. But to be in this magical place, which I know the commitment to maintaining an archival record of, like, you think I list authors in here, like scroll these stacks here, like, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna find gems here, and I know that's why we're all drawn here. And so, thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Libe Lula. Thank you, Sally, for hosting
Y'all know it's you. Y'all know it's
Thank you for your
you.
cleansing.
Yeah.
They cleanse this place once in a while and keep it fresh.
Oh yeah, all the offerings from Christopher, hit them up.
Yes.
Do we, before we get too far from the work, do we have any questions for Christopher? Yeah, we can start
Yes, I
here.
saw it. And then,
Who's go first?
Go ahead.
I think for me, one of the most exciting things about reading is that it takes your memory, or rather your imagination takes your memory and reorders it, and I think that, and then plays it back to you like a film or a piece of theater, which is why reading can be so visceral. What I think is so rich and evocative that was shared from your work tonight, this evening, was that reading tarot does the same. That we don't need we don't necessarily need rather the advent of language. Just think that is so powerful, especially having a lineage of people from a country that did not let us read. That is very important to me. And so my question for you is, was there a particular chapter or maybe a card where articulating the dramatization of what your imagination and memory were doing was particularly difficult?
I mean, like all of it, like it totally was so hard. But a card, I mean,
Or I guess maybe a better way to ask that question, like Jacob wrestling with God.
Right.
Was there a card that you were wrestling? It's like wrestling inside of a
Oh.
sentence to articulate.
so I honestly wrestled a lot with the beginning. The first two chapters, I wrote those, and then like I kind of got into the groove as I kept going, and there was times, I mean, I remember with like the Seven of Pentacles, my wrists were like literally aching and hurting, but like I was on 10th line and I just had to write through it, and I put that in there, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, and this is gonna be memorialized. You know what I mean?
There was pain.
There was pain. Like, it's a lot, and you know, and I got there and I was like, okay, cool. And then like I went back and reread the first chapters, and I was like, oh my god, like how did I get a book deal with this? Like, this is so embarrassing. And so I had to rewrite it and like kind of bring it up to par with where I had felt I had achieved with the rest of the chapters. I think that the major arcana as a whole was hard, like the devil, the Hierophant. These are big cards. Like they're like, what am I gonna say new about the devil, the Hierophant, or like, you know, these are like, there's so much out there, whereas the minor was very, there's like such niche and nuance in them, and like I really love to pull that out, and like I felt like I had interesting kind of takes there, but I was like, I have to talk about, like I have to like decolonize the history of the church and the Pope in like in 8 pages or however long, you know what I mean? Like, oh God. And so, I mean, those in particular come to mind. It's like I said, the first chapters were still hard, like really hard, just for, I don't know, like you just get into it, and again, the majors, I mean, all of the majors, it's like the devil and the Hierophant definitely come to mind. I'm trying to think. I just like the High Priestess was absolutely as well, because I just try to do her justice. Like, she's so important, and I don't know that I did do her justice, but I hope so. I mean, I attempted it, but it's very. She was hard. She was really, really hard.
Yeah.
She was really hard. Like, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your question. Thank you. And I also, you know, you will see the brilliant E.Y. Washington quoted in the work as well, in the Hanged One. They're a brilliant writer and astrologer as well, so I'm very honored to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love how you two really propose the question as where are you in your writing process, and getting pulled for that or from that, and it makes me feel really moved to be in community that we are all trying to aspire to write and put something out into the world, especially if we do identify as trans or BIPOC or indigenous. And so I would love to poach the question of, yes, you were invited to write this chapter for a publishing house. What would you say to other queer trans indigenous writers out there who are trying to push their hard skating manuscripts into the world when the publishing industry has a lot of different hoops?
Oh yeah.
To say lightly.
Right, at least, right. I mean, is to write is like there's a level of discipline. I mean, I feel like this book and this work and this project matured me as a writer. I made the decision like the morning when I got the deal that I was like, I'm gonna write this book regardless. Like regardless if they give me a deal or not, if they decide to publish it or not. Okay, I made my resolve, you know, and I think sometimes the resolve with writing is so challenged because of the structural limitations that gatekeep and keep us out. And so there's something though where you accumulate the text, like you get a hefty body of work, like you have a big old Word doc or whatever, a big full journal, and you're like, this is substantial, like this is something. And I mean, I think of, you know, Bell Hooks wrote Ain't I a Woman like at 18 and took about like 10 years for it to actually get published, and then she wrote 20-some books, like, you know what I mean? Like there's a patience and there's perseverance, and I think that for me, tarot as a mode of communing with the divine fortified my process, and like the Nine of Swords is Mars and Gemini, and it's like writing is torture, like, you know what I mean? Writing is turmoil, like writing is like painful, like sometimes the voice of critique is so hard, and that those critiquing voices of course are the state.
Yeah, they're not our own.
The state, they're not, I mean, right, and I mean, when it becomes debilitating, when it becomes, when it impedes you from making the work rather than like holding you to a scale that you know you're capable of. And so I think that a big part of it is just one, persistence. Like it's just the level of like, don't stop, don't let it know. Like if you have faith, if you believe in it, like it will find, and I love North Atlantic for this. They have a real commitment. They're a small publisher and nonprofit in Berkeley. My editor was amazing, and they was not, this is like, I'd like to say my personal PhD. which needed for the to be realized has to be done outside of the institution, you know, in order for the project in my thesis, if you will, to be fully understood and realized. And so the fact that it's not being taught in the institution is like really trippy. This is like really good. There's a lot of I'm trying to just embrace that and enjoy it right now, but I know there's, you know, yeah, of course. But that process of self-belief in like what you have to say, you know, I just think that that's like so, like you have to really believe in yourself, like you are in God, like you have to believe in a power greater than you, you know, or the goddess or whoever you're in relationship with. That helped me endure, because there was, I as well, give yourself a deadline, give yourself deadlines, give yourself structure, give yourself boundaries. We can be rewriting endlessly, as you said. I'm like waiting for the next reprint for like little things, like, you know, I haven't even got my own author copies yet. I'm like, that's the like writing is revision, right? But at the same time, give yourself goals and deadlines and accept like the imperfections as opportunities for your unique voice to emerge.
This is so
like
good. Can I like converse with like what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the perseverance aspect, the curiosity of being impatient within the patience. And I pulled the Empress card for my writing practice today, and what came to me was like the mother.
Yes.
You know, but to me today it was like the dark mother.
Yes.
Because my writing practice is very sexual, it's very like memory based, and it's very tantalizing and evocative and provocative. And so trying to let it be messy and let it fall outside of the conventions of writing, and to continue to let poetry be its own form of whatever this trans expression wants to be. So I appreciate the yumminess that you're offering here, and how spellbinding every single sentence is. It just like wards it up, like locks it in.
I love that so
Yeah,
much. Thank
so
you.
thank you, babe.
What is your like first memory, or like what brought you to tarot, astrology, spirituality?
A really early memory I have is like, it was my birthday. I don't know how old I was, but my grandma Cece took me to the bookstore in the mall at the Inland Center, and I mean, Scorpios just know they're Scorpios. Like, we're just born with that knowing. Like, we're just like, we're a cult. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're into it. And I always just found myself in that section, and I remember getting an astrology book that was like an actual astrology book, like not a pop astrology book. Like, there was the math and the charts in it. You know what I mean? I was like too young to like really work with that. But I would say that in particular for like just being drawn to that section always in the bookstore, reading like our signs with my grandmother, with my aunt, like they were encouraging of it, but not only open to that, but of my interest in literacy. Like, they were like, that was the queer expression that was like welcomed, thankfully. And then in tarot, I did a trip. I did like a work exchange in like a vegan farm, if you can call it a farm because there's animals, in Hawaii, right? And I was like, ooh, I'm not a laborer. Like, I am not meant for this. Like, okay. I was like pulling up banana trees and like planting strawberry beds, and I'm like, okay. But I was gifted a reading there from like some of the elders there, and it was very sacred and it was very special, and that reading has always stood with me. And so that was one of the earliest ones, and I wasn't fully like, oh, it's like, okay, I'm gonna get into tarot now. It was just a mode of guidance at a real crossroads in my life. And then kind of, to go beyond your question a little, like, when the pandemic hit and I like just got my master's, and I was like, I'm gonna be a teacher, and I'm gonna like, you know, do like maintain the same purpose, as I like to say, like firm on purpose but flexible on like goals, right? But the pandemic happened, and I always say I had a pre-pandemic because I was unemployed, but the tarot was again my guidance at big chaotic moments and uncertainty and like the doubts, you know, and so, yeah, so, yeah.
Awesome, thank you for saying that. Firm on purpose, flexible on
Goals, yes, yes.
Perfect. Any other questions? Comments?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm curious why you think divination is so important in this day and age. Like, why is it so important to foresee or maybe interact with different timelines or different things that are possibilities? Like, what is for you the value in that?
Such a great question, thank you. For me, it's always like a buffer. Like it's like you're falling, and before you splat on the ground, having a card that foretells, like, if you pull the devil that day, you're like, okay, let me put my guard up a little bit, like, let me be on the lookout here, like, and when that kind of interaction manifests, because the cards manifest, like the omen manifests, like when you're really doing it, and again, the divination sensitizes our faculties, like it's like a recovering of that subtle faculty. There's a phrase, astrologer good, but it's like you're diviner good, right? It's like, okay, cool, like I called this, or like, you know, I saw this kind of forthcoming, and so it gives you it breaks the impact of just like raw dogging life in a little bit of a sense, which I appreciate. But at the same time, divination evidences like a divine dialogue. And I think we're so self-contained, or we feel like we're by design isolated, and the world becomes dead and like cold and lifeless, and it's just like towards productivity and work. Whereas opening back up to a divine dialogue, even if it's a mundane confirmation, like if you pull a card and it's not like, I got a book deal today, or like I met the love of my life, or whatever, it's just like, oh, the thing I was gonna watch on TV was like totally an expression of this card, like a woman going through the trials of fire, you know what I mean? There's a sense of like confirmation that one is outside of the paradigm of like religion and the way that they like poo-poo on our own self like authoring and our own ability to do these magical things. It feels very affirming, you know, it feels very much like, again, I can trust where the limits of my own self-belief are. I can bow before and trust in and source a divine power, like a higher power, and that becomes very intimate through a daily practice of like reading cards or like practicing divination. So it's about like intimate relationships with the divine. So I would say that, and then like also, you know, straight time. It's like, as Esteban Munoz talks about, and like using cards to queer time, like that's actually a necessity for queer beings, like to embrace like fully my queerness, my transness. That requires that I also exist in a temporal space that is queer, and that's natural versus, again, like the straitjacketing of time that capitalism does.
I'm excited you mentioned a second project, second book.
Yeah.
You know, you're not even done touring this one.
It's that.
I wanna know everything.
I know. You know, and there's gaps in terms of like this being here. It feels like, I mean, an artist with, you know, by the time the album comes out or the tour comes out, like they've already been separate from that work for some period of time, right? And so it's still, I mean, it's still very recent, but I want to maintain, again, that discipline of writing. And so my Substack is the next project, and y'all, it's like insider details, okay? So like, it's not formally announced or anything like that. I spoke with my editor, I spoke with Jesse, who I want to be a part of the project as well, slowly getting there, but correspondences. I don't know what the subtitle is yet, but a collection of these Substack essays that are, not like every Substack post is gonna go into it, but like, getting into the lived a bit more, like a little bit more nuance into pairing of some of the cards and some of the readings. Just kind of extending the project further, whereas this is a big overlay and a big groundwork. So one part, the correspondence is between me and my subscribers, which I hope you all join my Substack. And then the second part, me in conversation with various folks like Sayla Saterstrom or like Jesse, with like other diviners, teachers, writers, because cards are dialogic, like they want to be in the hands between people, right? And so existing also within that legacy of so many authors who have the transcription of like their conversations and their interviews, and then hopefully a type of anthology, like the third part of it will be like an anthology with a contribution from each person that I'm in conversation with, and correspondence with.
Sounds like it can be like a deck pairing as well.
That would
That's
be,
my question.
It has to be, I mean, it makes sense.
That's a goal, it definitely as well. That's like something I would love to have happen down the pipeline. I think what that would be just finding like the right artists to work with, because that's such a big thing. Yeah, that's tricky. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or something of that sort. But yeah, absolutely. That'd be a dream when that comes to.
Yelena, did you have a question as well?
That
Just
was
the
it.
tarot deck.
Okay, yeah.
Is it coming? When is it coming?
Right,
Can we
it's
see
give me
it?
some time. Okay. Yeah, I'm an artist with words.
Yes, yes, absolutely,
Yes.
you are. Yes.
Thank you.
Say it louder for the back.
Yes.
Yes.
Would you be open to pull a card for the collective?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. I don't have. Oh, here's the deck. Okay, thank you. It's like I don't have my deck.
Anyone that had a card or you may I grab it?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes. Absolutely.
Cards? There we go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Thank you, darling. Thank you. No, back there. No. No. No.
Card for the collective. I'm using Karen Mohanty's Mahogany Tarot, which I highly recommend. It's a melanated tarot deck for the Smith Waite edition, which is like, the Smith Waite is like foundational, right? It's iconic, but I like them brown. Red light. The King of Swords. Hey. The King of Swords. I love the King of Swords. This is Aquarius, if you're seeing which is where my Saturn is, in my midheaven, Saturn ruling my the house of publishing, my career and whatnot. I'll read a little bit from here, but I won't go on, okay, I promise. King. So he's a king, so he's in chapter 4. I pair the court with it as well. So those were big chapters as well. It's like, okay, the court chapter is like where I unfold them. I have like 4 extra things. Anyhow, the King of Swords for the collective. I'm like, what am I putting here? Maybe I'll realize it's right. To the extent that I become clearer about my choices and my dreams, which are substantively political and attributively pedagogical, and to the extent that I recognize that though an educator I am also a political agent, I can better understand why I fear and realize how far we still have to go to improve our democracy. I also understand that as we put into practice an education that critically provokes the learner's consciousness, we are necessarily working against myths that deform us. As we confront such myths, we also face the dominant power, because those myths are nothing but the expression of this power, its ideology. The King of Swords creates new ways of knowing while strategically sharing knowledge so it is accessible by all. Overcoming censorship, there are no areas, themes, or values that are consigned to silence by this king. We are told to talk about everything. Everything requires our testimony. Learners forced into silence and uniformity are denied active participation in their education, which undermines the democratic ideals of education and the development of the subject's critical reasoning faculties. The King of Swords moves us into identities of integrity, a healing process that requires releasing arrogant perceptions. Through this constant process of self-construction, new topographies are formed so that the fragmented psyche is recombined. This reconstruction is a type of communication demonstrating that the reality that our identities, our sense of self, and manifold relations to the world can move beyond the oppressor-oppressed dialectic. The king is there for us when we have a crisis of meaning. Within their court, we are to interrogate our experiences and unravel the deepest unconscious conditioning of domination. The violent paradigms we have internalized are undone by this king's sword. He has a host of verbal techniques to manage destructive action. He uncovers unconscious resistance while joining with us in a way that helps us feel less defensive, less aggressive. The master swordsman is the one who disarms without drawing blood. Through graceful maneuvering, we are freed from repetitive and destructive patterns. When aggression arises as an overcompensation for feeling powerless, this king fulfills a lack we've been conditioned to believe we have. He tells us he is on our side. We are not alone. We are more powerful and more capable than we realize. The King of Swords avoids activating defense mechanisms by engaging the subject in progressive communication. In this manner, our resistance to fully knowing ourselves are dissolved, and our path toward destiny is paved. I call him my fat king. He has daddy issues. He's dealt with them, and he teaches you how to do the same. Yes. He names himself. He teaches us to do the same. He's a teacher, a theorist, palopiere, any intelligent person that you can have a conversation with and feel safe to self-disclose. And at the same time, he tells you to write. Right, so keep writing.
So everyone keep writing.
Yes.
Yes, beautiful. Let's give a round of applause for this. Thank you again, y'all, for coming to, once again, another beautiful celebration and party in the Casita Libelula that is your home, our home. And we are just so proud of you, Christopher. We are beyond words, and we will all be rooting for you, lighting candles for you as you continue your journey. Next stop is Canada.
Yes.
And folks, thank you again for being part of the experience, being part of the family. This is not a singular act, and we talk a lot about that in our moments of conversation here on this couch and just in community with each other. So as always, the bookshop is your space. We will be open for the next hour or so.
There's a raffle too, right?
There's a raffle. Oh yeah, there's a raffle. Thanks.
Yeah, if you put it in, put it in the raffle. I have like 5 or 6 copies if anyone wants to buy, and I can sell, like you can see me and I'll, if you want me to sign it, I'll sign it. And then
We'll have copies tomorrow.
we will have copies tomorrow, and if
Friday.
you want it signed, I will come in and maybe you can leave a name and I'll sign them while I'm here if you want to come hang out, pick them up.
Sully does have a few pre-orders that we can do if you purchase.
Bigger was like a theme. I was like, okay, bigger. Like, I got you. All right, let us see, Mia. Otra, Gabriella. All right. Yay. Drum roll. Christian Johnson.
Because we're Scorpios.
I know it's gonna
You're like, it's totally my Scorpio.
Yeah.
Hey. Thank y'all all again so much. Christopher, you can hang out for a little
Yes,
bit. Tell you
absolutely.
conversation,
Yeah.
questions, all those good things. The space is yours once again. Any other final thoughts, feelings, offerings?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.